It's estimated that throughout human history, hundreds of thousands of soldiers have lost their lives in battle without ever actually facing an enemy soldier, simply because their commanders made some of the most boneheaded tactical decisions imaginable. Let's start with the bad calls and slowly work our way to the deadliest disasters in human history. Number 4. The War of the Bucket. Now, this one sounds like a bad internet meme, but it's a completely real historical event that took place in 1325 between two neighboring Italian city-states, Modena and Bologna. You see, back then, these two cities already hated each other's guts over religious and political drama, but things reached a boiling point when a small group of soldiers from Modena decided to sneak into Bologna in the middle of the night. But they didn't go to steal gold, or kidnap a noble, or destroy a castle. No, they just went straight to the main town square, unhooked a random wooden bucket from the local well, and ran back home to show off their new trophy. And when the people of Bologna woke up the next morning and realized their favorite bucket was gone, they didn't just say, "Well, that sucks, let's go buy another one." Instead, they experienced an absolute collective meltdown. They demanded that Modena return the bucket immediately, and when Modena basically told them to go kick rocks, Bologna did the only logical thing left. They declared a full-scale war. Bologna raised an army of 30,000 infantry and 2,000 cavalry, marching straight to Modena to get their plumbing back. The resulting Battle of Zappolino involved over 30,000 men beating the absolute daylights out of each other, leaving around 2,000 soldiers completely obliterated and dead on the battlefield. All for a single piece of cheap wooden bucket that Modena actually kept, and it is still sitting on display in a museum basement to this day. Number 3. The Charge of the Light Brigade. This absolute tactical nightmare took place in 1854 during the Crimean War. The British military was trying to stop a retreating Russian artillery unit from moving some captured guns, which is a pretty standard military objective. The commander-in-chief, Lord Raglan, sent a written order to his cavalry brigade telling them to advance rapidly to the front to prevent the enemy from carrying away the guns. The issue was that Lord Raglan was sitting way up high on a hill with a perfect view of the entire valley, while his cavalry commander, Lord Lucan, was down on the flat ground and couldn't see a single thing. So when the messenger showed up and handed over the order, a classic piece of terrible communication broke out. "All right, the boss wants you to attack the guns right now." "What guns? I don't see any guns. There are 3 different Russian artillery positions out there. Those ones over there, obviously. You mean the ones surrounded by 20 battalions of infantry and 100 heavy cannons?" "Yeah, sure, get a load of this guy questioning orders. Just go smash them." So, instead of attacking a small retreating unit, the Light Brigade, equipped with nothing but horses and swords, turned a corner and charged directly into a literal valley of death, taking heavy cannon fire from 3 different directions at the exact same time. Within a few minutes, nearly half the brigade was cut down and destroyed, forcing the survivors to turn around and ride all the way back while everyone watched in complete horror. Number 2. The Battle of Karansebes. This is easily one of the most embarrassing self-inflicted wounds in human history. The year was 1788, and the Austrian army, consisting of about 100,000 soldiers, had set up camp near the town of Karansebes to prepare for a battle against the Ottoman Empire. The trouble started when a small unit of scouts crossed a nearby river to see if any enemy troops were hiding in the shadows. They didn't find any Ottoman soldiers, but they did find a group of local merchants who offered to sell them a massive supply of alcohol. Naturally, the scouts bought everything they had and proceeded to get completely hammered. A little while later, a group of infantry soldiers crossed the river and saw the scouts having a great time, so they demanded a share of the booze. The drunk scouts refused, a massive argument broke out, and someone accidentally let off a single gunshot into the air. Within seconds, absolute chaos erupted. In the dark, the infantry soldiers panicked and started sprinting back to the main camp screaming that the enemy had arrived. Because the Austrian army was made up of soldiers from many different countries who didn't speak the same language, nobody could understand what anyone was saying. When officers started yelling, "Halt! Halt!" to restore order, the foreign soldiers misheard it as, "Allah! Allah!" and assumed the camp was being overrun. The entire army went into a full-on panic, turning their weapons on each other and firing cannons into their own tents. By the time the sun came up the next morning, thousands of Austrian soldiers lay dead on the floor, and when the actual Ottoman army arrived 2 days later, they found a completely empty battlefield littered with bodies, requiring them to do absolutely zero work to capture the town. Number 1. The Scramble for the Red Sea. Now, this one had to go last due to the sheer mathematical scale of the failure. In 1904, during the Russo-Japanese War, the Russian Baltic Fleet was ordered to sail all the way around the world to reinforce their Pacific squadron. The journey was doomed from day one because the entire crew was gripped by a severe case of paranoia, convinced that Japanese torpedo boats were hiding in every single bush and wave, despite the fact that Japan was literally thousands of miles away. While sailing through the North Sea, the fleet spotted a group of British fishing boats out in the fog. Instead of checking their binoculars, the Russian commanders completely lost their minds, assuming it was a Japanese ambush. They immediately opened fire, blasting away at innocent fishermen for over 20 minutes, while accidentally shooting several of their own battleships in the crossfire. The political fallout was an absolute disaster, nearly causing Great Britain to declare war on Russia right then and there. But the nightmare didn't stop there. As the fleet continued its journey around Africa, they managed to accidentally cut their own underwater communication cables, paralyze their navigation systems, and lose several ships in the fog because someone brought a collection of exotic snakes and wild animals on board that escaped into the lower decks. When the bruised and exhausted fleet finally arrived at the Straits of Tsushima after months of pure misery, the actual Japanese Navy was waiting for them, completely fresh and fully prepared. Within a matter of hours, the Japanese forces completely obliterated the Russian fleet, sinking almost every single major battleship and costing thousands of lives, bringing one of the most disastrous military voyages in human history to a tragic and completely avoidable end.